Hey everyone, welcome to your Self-Helpless snack where we give you a little taste of the Self-Helpless podcast with a mini episode. And today's episode is a bite from a conversation and Q&A that I did with my friend Kris, all about minimalism. This episode is something I shared with my subscribers over at my email list, the D List, which is a free list that you can join at DelanieFischer.com. I like to share different resources and tips for creatives, entrepreneurs, multi-hyphenates, different gigs that I hear about, media opportunities, that kind of stuff. And this particular chunk of the conversation offers a tip for where you can start if you'd like a little jump start into this whole minimalism thing, if you're curious about adding this to your life in some way. So one place to start that I mentioned is really out of necessity when you're just so stressed that something's got to give and you have to do something different. And the other is more about accessibility to give yourself some quick wins and build momentum. I also share a tip for entrepreneurs who find themselves having a lot of different interests and ideas and are struggling with overwhelm because of it. Just a simple way to categorize your interests and projects. And then addressing this whole concept about minimalism, it's not about how much stuff you own. It's actually not about stuff at all. And everyone's implementation of it is different. So grab a napkin because here's your snack, baby. I think the first thing I found was the Marie Kondo, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up.
Oh, yeah.
That book first. And then it was around the same time the minimalism documentary came out, the very first one. Started doing more research into it, found people like Leo Babauta. And I was like, oh gosh, this is resonating so much. And I feel like it's something it finally gave me permission. I think finding out about minimalism gave me permission to do stuff I already knew I wanted to do, but felt like I couldn't because nobody else was doing it, or there was so much guilt or obligation involved. For me, minimalism really means removing excess so you could focus on what's most important to you. This can be about belongings. This can be about activities. It can be about career. It can be about people in your life. It could be about anything, but really that's kind of the basic definition that I've given it for myself. This is something that has completely changed my life. I remember starting with my stuff, going through all of my belongings, and that transferred into everything that I was doing after that. You're training your brain to think in a certain way, and then it starts to look for other things that you can use the same process on. Yeah. So then I kind of looked at, okay, the activities I was doing and which ones weren't really bringing me any kind of fulfillment. Then it was like the jobs I had. It was everything. It was how I was spending my day and how I was spending my time. So I thought that was really an interesting kind of side effect to starting with your physical stuff. And it becomes kind of this habit that, for me at least, it's now really ingrained in me to ask myself these kind of deep questions.
I just love the way that you're explaining it, that it trickles over. Like, it's not just you are a minimalist in this. I mean, you can be like, you can pick and choose. As you're explaining, I'm able to sit here and think about in ways that I really am a minimalist that I didn't even think I was, because I had a strict definition of what it was and what it should look like.
Yeah.
So as you're talking about this, I'm like, yes, I have totally looked at excess and scaled way back because it didn't bring me joy and I just didn't want it anymore. Really, my whole life now is scheduled around what brings me joy.
Yeah,
which is minimalism essentially, right?
Exactly. That's the thing. People are like, oh God, that sounds boring. And actually minimalism is maximizing enjoyment. That's what it is. It's removing all the shit you feel very blah about so you can just have fun as much as possible.
Yes.
I think it's so funny. And I feel like this topic is so important because there's so many different feelings around this word and what it means and what it is. And really, it's when you remove distractions from your life, you have more energy, you have more time. I can tell you when I started this process, my health improved, my relationships improved, I started making more money, I started doing more fun shit, going on more vacations. I mean, it completely changed my life. All of the lifestyle choices I've made started with minimizing my stuff.
So what are some hot tips, like you like to say, that can help someone maybe move forward a little bit quicker
Well, I'll just share with you what my first step was. My first step was learning about the concept of minimalism and applying it to something that felt like a really simple place to start. My clothing. That was my first starting point. It was like, let me get all my clothes together and really be honest about what I love, what makes me feel good, and what I don't wear. And that was like my first step. And then I went to the next set of things. And then once I felt like my stuff was in a good spot, I just naturally started thinking about other stuff. It wasn't even a set process really, but start with the thing that feels the most accessible to you. If you are standing in front of a bookshelf full of 500 books and it's really starting to kind of overwhelm you how many books you have, and it's really not bringing you joy, and you find that by having 500 books, you're actually neglecting the ones you truly want to make time for and read, start with your bookshelf. If your schedule looks like a hot mess, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do something, I have no choice but to take some things off my plate, start with your schedule and look at, okay, what really can go? What is just a self-imposed activity that I have on my schedule that I can really get out of or ease out of? So I think that you have to ask yourself what feels the most accessible or the most urgent at this time might be a good place to start. Until everything that is left within your control, you have curated your life to what brings you the most happiness every day. Minimalism in your life, it evolves over time. I mean, there was a point in time where I was painting on mugs, right? So my home looked very different. I had a lot of space that I needed for my art supplies and my inventory and all that stuff. And then when that business changed and it was no longer physical items, that space freed up and I used it for something else. I used it to support the next phase of my business. What you own right now and what you're doing right now might not serve you in a year or 2 years. And then you have to kind of revisit the process again. I think another tip that's helpful, and this has really helped me because I am somebody who I have a lot of interests and passions, knowing what category to put things in. And for example, I like to paint in my free time. All of the canvases in my home, I painted myself. I like to paint furniture, all that stuff. Am I adding that to my business offerings? No, that's just something that I enjoy in my free time. So painting on canvases, I have put in the category of hobby. So you get honest with yourself. Where does it need to be placed in my life? Thank you for tuning in to Self-Helpless. You can find our brand new merch, Patreon community, and other fun goodies at selfhelplesspodcast.com. We'd be thrilled if you left an Apple Podcast review, shared this episode with a friend, or post about it on Instagram and tag us at Self-Helpless Podcast so we could repost you and say hi. As an independently produced show, we sincerely appreciate your support. Thanks, everybody.